say it, what do you think of? Thank you. We got some smart ones. Sex, you know, doing it, hitting it, working it, stroking it. I'm in love with your shirt, by the way. It says doing it for my friends in the back. Kelly and I are getting ready to kick off. Hey, there she is with her boarding pass. We're very modern. Getting ready to kick off our fall 2011 tour. I can't believe there's a 2011 tour and people are still listening to what we have to say. But class of 2015, we're coming for you.
I intend to leave here with a greater knowledge of the topics addressed and a deeper understanding of the belief system of others.
We just came in from a red eye, and I haven't slept since yesterday morning. Living the dream.
Being sexually empowered has nothing to do with how much sex you choose to have. I promise you, some of our most sexually empowered people in the room today are choosing to abstain from sex. What it means is you know who you are, you know what you want, you know your values, and you're willing to rock them in any situation. However, if your friend, your sorority sister, your fraternity brother, your teammate, your dorm mate, whatever the case may be, makes different choices, you can still be there for them. And that is a truly sexually empowered member of this community.
In 2003, Kelly Addington and Becca Tieder began their cross-country journey, and since then, their message of sexual assault awareness, prevention, and sexual empowerment has reached over 500,000 college students. They have created, launched, and embraced various programs and campaigns, including Let's Talk About It, Unite for Change, No Woman Left Behind, and Sex for Sations. In 2010, they founded One Student, a nonprofit organization inspired by their core belief that one sexual assault is too many and one student can make a difference. This is not just their story, but the story of anyone whose life has been impacted by these issues.
It has been a pleasure working with you both and advising the No Woman Left Behind chapter. I value the work that you and One Student do, and it has actually inspired me to do even more. To do the work that we do promotes positive sexuality and sexual assault prevention. I can't thank you enough for what you've done for me and for our campus community.
It was about midway in the semester of my senior year. I started having the same nightmare almost every single night for a month. And I thought, I've got to get a hold on this. I've got to go to the health center and start getting some counseling to work through this. Maybe I should drop a class or figure something out. And then one morning, I woke up from the most real and frightening nightmare I've ever had still to this day. Something or someone was on top of me. I was completely trapped. I felt like I was paralyzed. Only this time, when I woke up, the dream felt like it was something that was so incredibly real. I could almost touch it, I could almost feel it. And I woke up screaming at the top of my lungs, crying uncontrollably, and I had been sweating so badly throughout the night that my pajamas were completely drenched with my own sweat. At that point, I realized that it had been almost 2 months since I had a period. I go to local Walgreens very early in the morning, and I'm creeping through the aisles, praying that I don't run into anyone that I know, because I'm about to buy a pregnancy test, and I had never done this before, and I hadn't had sex in almost a year. I waited the exact 3 minutes that it said I needed to wait, and I walked in, picked the stick up off the bathroom counter. And there was a faint pink line in the oval window. And after reading the directions at least a dozen times, I knew that that meant that it was positive. And I didn't expect that. I didn't even begin to prepare myself to see that. And I remember stepping back and putting the stick down on the counter, and my entire body went numb. My heart sunk to the floor. And at that moment in my life, I heard nothing. I saw nothing. I couldn't think, I couldn't feel. And the best way to describe exactly how I was feeling is I felt like nothing mattered. I was nothing.
At that
that point in our lives, I really think if you had asked Kelly and I, what is the absolute worst thing that could happen to you, we would have said to get pregnant. We weren't thinking about sexually transmitted infections. We weren't thinking about, you know, murder or robbery. We were thinking about that pregnancy was the worst thing that could happen. It never occurred to us that it could happen from being sexually assaulted or raped.
Becca was so good about saying, okay, you get to choose, you get to decide, and whatever that is, I support you, I'm here for you, and laying out the options and really talking about things, because I was on autopilot. Like, she was my voice of reason, she was my strength. You were my strength when I was weak. Sorry.
Woo!
No, I mean,
That's our
she
song,
was,
by the way. Not
she
everyone
was
knows
the,
that.
I know. She was there for me in a way I needed her more than I could ever know. 2 days before I was given that date that my doctor gave me to decide whether or not I wanted to have an abortion or carry the baby to term, I had a miscarriage.
About a year and a half after Kelly was raped and the subsequent miscarriage, she and Becca took a road trip to New Orleans, Louisiana. It was late at night, driving along I-10 West, that the two friends found a greater meaning in their shared trauma and recovery.
We really started having the conversation about everything that we had overcome and everything that we had been through and how much we were challenged as individuals, and our friendship was challenged, all because of this rape. And we asked the question, why did this have to happen to us? Why us? And then we started talking about, why does this have to happen?
May of 2007, I got a phone call that my daughter had been missing, and she was found about 3 hours later. And I went to the hospital, went there, and it never crossed my mind that she would have been beaten up or any of that. We went in there, and her face was all black and blue, and the first thing that she said to me was, "Mom, I'm sorry." And it wasn't her fault.
Well, after I was sexually assaulted, I found different resources. I found Unite for Change, which is now one student, and reached out to them and decided to ask if they would meet me, and they did. And from there, it's taken off.
To me, the thing that really stuck out is the fact that this young, incredibly vulnerable woman who was clearly still very much hurting from what happened to her had the courage to reach out to us and to share the most intimate and frightening thing that's ever happened to her in her entire life. And not only did she want to be heard and she wanted to share with us what happened to her, she wanted to do something about it.
I think one of the things that her mom, Pamela, said that has always resonated with me is right after she was assaulted, if she got out of the hospital, Sabrina likes to run. And her mom was petrified. Her mom didn't want her out of her sight. And Sabrina's like, I'm going on a run. And her mom, didn't want her to. And she's like, if I stop living my life, then they get the best of me.
I didn't want this to define me in any way. I didn't want it to define who I was. Now, where I am today and looking back on everything, I was kind of a fighter. I wanted to educate myself. And so I took that step, and contacting Kelly and Becca was one of those pieces to my puzzle of healing. I had counseling as well, and so there's one thing that helped me to get where I am today. I think it's a multitude of things. I define myself as a strong, independent woman, and I go after what I want and what I believe in, and violence prevention is one of the things I'm very passionate about.
Now, Kelly and I, like most nonprofits, there's a vision to an organization. We are nothing without our mission. I think all of you who work and are involved in our community would agree with that. But who is it that embodies our vision, our mission the most? The Vision Award is established to say who in their everyday life is living this mission. And I think after being here with us tonight, it's very obvious that all the way from, as Kelly said, California, our dear friend Sabrina Sadler.
She turned a horrible situation into something positive, and now she's trying to make a difference and help other survivors and get the word out. I want to make a difference too, and I tell a lot of people about what happened to my daughter. They have kids that go to college and get the word out to make a difference, so they're aware that things do happen.
Learned, and our almost decade of working with socially conscious, making decisions, moving and grooving college students is the fact that you guys need a forum to talk openly and honestly about sex. So we're going to talk a lot about sex. However, we're going to respect the fact that everybody has unique boundaries, and so this is a text-in program. So you'll be able to participate anonymously if that's more within your comfort zone.
We had been talking about the sexual assault piece for years before we thought, well, how come everybody's so shocked by this? How could a community not want to talk about sexual assault and address this issue with the statistics as high as they are on campuses? And then we said, well, wait a minute, they're not comfortable talking about sexuality in general. So of course they're not going to want to talk about the kind of sex that they, that they don't want. Or so sexualization is like the appetizer. It's a conversation starter. I mean, who doesn't want to play cards? I love cards. And then you're like, oh, wow, okay. And this one is a very long one. The King of Hearts is, what should someone do if they think they've been sexually assaulted? Are the services in your community adequate? If not, how could they be enhanced? That's a three-parter.
Okay, if your friend is trying to hook up, and you define that any way you want, with someone who has clearly had too much to drink, what should you do? Bystander 1, nothing. It's not my business. Bystander 2, distract my friend and leave. Bystander 3, get the intoxicated person's friends to take their friend home. Bystander 4, get someone else to intervene, like a bartender or RA. Bystander 5, why is this an issue? Maybe both parties are interested.
All right, has everybody had a chance to text? Okay, I'll give you
Take your
another
time.
couple seconds. No pressure.
Okay. No, distract your friend and take your friend away. Like that's, sorry, not like, hey, look, there's a rocket. See ya. Woo, dodge that bullet. Loser. Oh, man. See you in the big house.
It is illegal to have sexual intercourse of any kind, sexual contact of any kind, while under the influence. It is illegal. But as community members, are we really holding people accountable to that law? How many of you are familiar with the term bystander intervention?
Me and two friends saw a 17-year-old, thoroughly intoxicated 17-year-old get gang raped by members of our college baseball team.
It was, spring of 2007 at De Anza Community College in Cupertino, California. 3 women playing on a soccer team, and the 3 of them had never gone out together before, which I always find interesting when I think about the social dynamics of what occurred. They knew each other on the field, but they didn't hang. So they go out, they're having a good time, go to another student athlete's party. It became odd to them that there was this flow of traffic going into this one room, and that there's these doors that are closed with a tarp on them. All things kind of red flag, red flag, red flag. And at one point, one of the players goes, she wants to be in here. And again, that might have been one of the largest red flags, because they're like, there's a girl in there, and it's one girl. And so they notice that there's a crease in the tarp on the bottom. And so, getting all PI style, they get down and they look, and subsequently each one of them looks in. And they all report seeing a very similar scene. They see a girl who they couldn't identify at that time, whose clothes had been clearly ripped off. And even when they've been interviewed, people say, taken off, and they're like, ripped off. And they see somebody engaging in sex with her. They can't tell who it is because of the way that they can just see them from behind. But they see their hips thrusting into her. And then they see somebody, for lack of more eloquent terms, shove their penis in her mouth. Her eyes are closed. She's clearly not conscious. And they make a choice. In that moment, they started throwing their body weight against the door until the door popped open. As soon as the door popped open, people start filing out. There was about 8 pairs of legs filed out of there. They saved this woman's life. These men who were raping this girl were their friends. One of the men in that room had called Lauren that night to invite her. I mean, some of them had gone on dates with people in that room. There was their relationship was not to the girl. And it rocked. I mean, that's humanity, and it becomes challenged at that point when you are with people that those were the people they thought they could trust. And then to see them doing this to another human being, you don't forget those images.
After seeing that and helping this girl, We were told that we were going to need some serious therapy by the investigators telling us this, and basically the best therapy that's been for myself has been going to universities and speaking about the incident.
Do you consider yourself a leader?
I may look like one because I'm tall, but I hope I am, because I've been vulnerable before, but I think it's being able to speak about your flaws in moments where you were vulnerable and empower other people, I think is a pretty strong human.
How did you find empowerment?
I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't. My head, I seriously, yeah.
They are so nervous and so worried about saying the wrong thing, but I keep telling them that they are so brave and courageous for doing this, and no matter what they say, the fact that they're still fighting this fight and still trying to shift the culture 4 years later, their presence being here, it doesn't matter what they say, they're not going to mess up. They're an inspiration to whoever listens to them.
Do you still talk? Do you still stay in contact with her? That was, instead of how she's doing, or do you still stay in contact with her?
You know, it's still really raw and really emotional, so I know that's the nerves that's getting to them. All right, homegirls, let's do this thing!
Stole your thing. Frizz.
Girl, it's the cheese. The mash of the cheese. Wait,
Kim's keys.
you don't know what a cheese is?
No.
April, you are so...
I don't know what a tea is.
Thank you, Sabrina. It's a hair straightener.
How much is it? Like $800?
No, like $89.
Oh.
My husband get you one on eBay for like half the price. These women are going to share with you a story about an experience that forever changed their lives. They're going to speak from the heart. And while you're listening to something that happened to them, think about the fact that it could have happened to any single one of you.
Our story today involves an incident in which we, myself and April and another friend, were witnesses to what we believed was a sexual assault of a 17-year-old girl.
We literally found her on a mattress, covered in someone else's vomit. We didn't even know that. And guys were just watching all this happen. I mean, it was frustrating to know that if one of those boys would have said, hey man, don't, or stop, this never would have happened. We would never had to have gone into that room.
The Dianza case to me is not dissimilar from any number of cases that represent bystander opportunities. And for us then the question is, will those students or individuals who witness those kinds of situations be the ones who engage those situations, interveners, or will they choose to bystand for some reason? And can we activate them on a societal scale? That's one of the things that we're trying to do, to be the engaged kind of caring individuals who will see those situations and react to them appropriately.
Maybe some people do things to put themselves at risk and always get in risky situations. Well, maybe then I'm a bystander. I have a friend that drinks too much. I have a friend that doesn't know how to monitor their boundaries, and I need to help that friend not put themselves in risky situations that lead to things that they later regret. But on the other hand, if someone exploits their vulnerability, that's unacceptable, and I'm not going to blame the victim. So when we get into discussion, there's a lot of complexities, but the simple part of it is when I see something that bothers me, I can make a difference and do something.
By a show of hands, how many of you all would have been comfortable intervening in the same situation that April and Lauren did? Yeah?
Yay.
Woo.
If we were talking earlier today, so it's okay after this, so what does empowerment mean? Empowerment means to what?
Empowerment is just being strong, being able to, stand up for what you believe in, telling others what you believe in, and not turning your back, and sticking to your word, and being a person of character, having character, just doing the right thing, being strong, owning up to your actions, being amazing.
Some people think that our job is really, they're like, how can you talk about sexual violence all the time? But what they don't realize is all the perks that we get. and it's the human perks. I mean, we meet these people. Like, we come together at this conference, and it's like sexual assault in our schools. And most people want to blow their brains out before they go to a conference on
It's a real effort.
sexual. But what happens is you get around the table with these people who want to make a difference. And at one of those tables, there's this wonderful woman, Lori Dishman, who made a difference.
6 years ago, 5.5 years ago, I was raped on a cruise ship by a security guard. Through that, I just knew that from what I went through in my experience that I was going to find a way to speak out and not let this happen to someone else and have them go through the things that I learned.
That's not a fake. That's not a cutout. That's real deal. This is social action.
The bill, the Cruise Ship Safety Act, 2010.
That's great.
Lori was, I'm going to do it, just give your backstory and you fill in if I screw up. Lori, having a good time, best friend on a cruise ship, rocking and rolling, went back to her room a little early. Sometimes you got to call it quits. I'll use the word, a male employee who had been fired from another cruise line broke into her room, brutally assaulted her. That's bad, but it gets worse. So she goes to report it. Right. Well, there is now, because Lori spoke up, got her congresswoman involved, and passed the bill.
Go, girl.
Damn, that's the
awesome.
elevator speech of how you change
Honey,
the
that
world.
was good.
I met Kelly and Becca 2 years ago. I went to hear them speak, and I just thought, wow, here's two women with an experience that they had gone through, best friends, that they're making a movement. Like they had the vision and the drive and the whole thing of what I still was not there yet to like know what I wanted to do, even though I had been doing it, I didn't see it. And so they really, it's amazing about those two girls. Sorry. Yeah. They helped me and they reminded me that it is important to still look up and look in that mirror and just see that person that's inside there, that and to acknowledge what you had done and to what you had gone through. I've been working through all my therapy and everything, but they just really reminded me of that person, not to forget when you look in that mirror and how you are helping so many people. And and from there, it's just been wonderful to be able to be a part of One Student and No Women Left Behind.
Hey, I'm just getting ready to leave. It's been a crazy couple of days, and I figured this was the kind of thing that we should talk about, is that as much as I love this work, today it's really hard for me to get on the plane. I'm not even sure it's ever really been this hard for me before. I lost my mom almost a month ago, and while you think getting away would make me feel better, kind of makes me just want to buckle down and stay here. So, anyways, I'm going to see one of our favorite clients, and so I'm excited about that, and meeting the entire One Student speakers team at the airport this morning. So the universe has aligned itself to make me feel good. But right now, while I'm here alone, and both of my kids are off with their respective caretakers today, I'm just sad. All right. Send me good universal energy. Bye. Hey, Cal.
What?
It's that magic time. Come on. Let's go change some lives.
I want your dad to see you ironing.
My dad? What about my husband?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want my husband to see it. Then he might think I have the capacity.
Not if he sees this. He won't.
Welcome to New England.
You brought a sign?
I brought a sign for you and I brought chocolate for both of you.
What does it say?
It says,
Oh,
congratulations,
happy
Mommy.
procreation.
Yeah, pretty much.
I made a baby. Woo! That's awesome.
Kelly and Becca and I met at a conference for sexual assault prevention in Florida, and we just became instant best friends and have been talking a lot ever since. It's nice to meet someone else who travels and talks at college campuses for a living for sexual assault prevention. I think it's the responsibility of every man to be a role model for other men, and for me as a 45-year-old man to be a role model for younger men in particular. Most rapists are men. The vast majority of rapists are men, whether the victims be female or male, kids or adults. But most men are not rapists. You see the difference? Most men are not rapists. Most rapists are men. So I think because of that reason, I'm part of a group, and guys and men and young men are part of a group that commits most of these crimes. And so because of that, I think it's our responsibility as men to raise our voices until men's violence against women in particular is a thing of the past.
Let me begin with reading you a quote. They raped me. They raped me by asking me to do things I'd never heard of, forcing things into me, telling me it turned them on. The boys of the neighborhood every day for weeks raped me. I read these words for the first time 2 years ago in a journal I found rummaging through a small box with a few pictures, concert tickets my sister left after she took her own life. With tears rolling down my cheeks, I found out for the first time ever that she was raped from the pages of her own journal. I found out she couldn't tell people of her own sexual identity without being blamed for being raped as a promiscuous teenager.
I just graduated, still on college campus though, working with college students. I'm a youth minister, and I graduated with a degree in religion and women's studies. And so my sister, my experience with my coworkers and family really led me to feminism. And I found a lot of hope in feminism, in the idea of equality between men and women. So in my classes, someone raised their hand and said, recently a police officer has told a group of women that they are victims of rape because they're sluts. And that if they dress in a promiscuous way, if they act slutty, that they'll be raped. And we all know, or I thought that we all knew, that people don't rape because of the way someone's dressed. People rape because it's a power issue. My Christian guy friends, when I got to invite them to the slut walk, we had a conversation about the word slut and whether or not that was good to use or not. But when they realized that the woman was called a slut because of the way she dressed and that she wouldn't have been raped if she wasn't a slut, they realized, well, that makes perfect sense why you would call it a slut walk and we would want to get involved. And so it's nice to be able to have a faith that embraces feminism and to give a speech at this event and then to have people of faith come up to me and say, Greg, that was inspiring, not only because of your story, but because you're a man and that your voice is clear that this is wrong.
Feminism is good for men. Because if I want to be in a relationship with someone, let's say it's a female, I have many females in my life that I'm in relationship with. I want them to be happy, whole people. So I want them to live in a world where they can flourish and be themselves. And guess what? I want to live in a world where I can flourish and be myself too. If the way we're taught to be men and women restricts men, it's not good for men either.
Men need to do more work than we have. We need to become leaders in groups like One Student. I'd like to see more and more men and young men step up, support One Student, become student leaders, and do their part to eradicate sexual violence on their campus.
To be an activist means that you'll take action, means that you will contribute to a solution, and you will be a part of the larger community that will say, no, we won't let sexual violence occur in our community. And so it can be simple things like speaking up when someone makes a joke that you're not comfortable with, or being sex positive and supporting survivors and doing, it can be very small things.
I think language is really, really crucial in how our world reacts to things. I think that there's a lot of language that's subliminally really degrading to women, and especially to women's sexuality, and changing those issues I think are the first step. But I think it also takes a really strong man to be able to confront other men in terms of not using that language, in terms of not saying things, because most guys are threatened that they'll lose their man card.
If we can be respectful toward each other and use respectful language toward each other, then it influences our behaviors to be respectful toward each other. An example that I would give you, students use the term on college campuses all the time, cock block. It's a very common terminology. Well, I was about to take her home with me and her friend came up and cock blocked me, which is what they mean is preventing a sexual experience from taking place. Well, one of the things we need to do in this movement is reclaim the term cock block It's good to be a cock block. A cock block is an intervener who prevents a sexual assault from taking place. And as long as it's a pejorative term amongst young individuals, then they're not going to engage in the behavior and see it as a positive. So one of the things we have to do is help to reshape language from their own slang. And one of the things I think we could start with is saying, it's good to be a cock block. Wouldn't you like to be a cock block too? I would. I think being a cock block is great. Join me.
Need t-shirts.
Yeah, absolutely. You got consent, got cock block.
Let's talk about the walk of shame. How many of you guys are familiar with that term? Okay, let me tell you why that sucks, okay? If we're going to associate consensual sex, which is presumably what we're talking about, with shame, how are we ever going to really enjoy the sex we choose to have, let alone create a culture where survivors can come forward? If we're supposed to feel shameful after sex, if afterward you're supposed to sit there like, damn, then we're doing something wrong. I want you guys, if you engage in sexual contact tonight, I can speak for Kelly on this one. If you engage in sexual contact tonight, afterwards, I want you to roll over your partner and be like, bam, baby, thank you. Woo! Hallelujah, okay? I want you to be like, I'm just gonna accept your thanks because I'm pretty sure I just changed your life, okay? And I'm going to thank you for doing the same for me. I want you to do what Kelly and I refer to as the stride with pride, okay? Because if you're having sex that you want to have, it's supposed to feel good, okay? That's number one, and you're supposed to feel good about it. Make choices that feel right for you, and don't let anyone shame you into the sex you choose to have, okay? We have to get away from talking about sex in a shameful manner. We have to show respect to ourselves and to our partners.
I met Kelly and Becca when they first came to our campus. It was about 3 years ago. They touched on a lot of things that I think some freshmen are like, we're not going to hear this kind of stuff. And they put it right out on the table, which can be somewhat shocking at first for some of the freshmen, and then make them more comfortable, which is what we want them to do. We want them to be more comfortable so they're able to talk about these things and not be afraid to stand up for themselves and stand up for their rights and what they believe in.
There are many college women and men who are assaulted but do not have the confidence or feel like they have the proper resources available to them to be empowered enough to tell their story. Even if it's simply to tell someone that it happened, it doesn't necessarily have to be pursuing criminal charges, but to even seek out help to empower themselves. There is a sense of blame that one feels when they experience such an act. If they're told by their friends, they may not know how to deal with it as well, and the friends may also feel a sense of blame because they were not there. So I think it's important for our students to know that they have resources and that there are women and men who have experienced these things and they're interested in telling their stories in order to help other people.
I mean, the first time I saw you, I had no idea what to expect. So that was
And they didn't tell you what you were going to see, right?
Not at all.
It's like before classes start on
They're just
campus.
like, go. This is freshman
And they
orientation. You have to do this.
Do you know someone who has been sexually assaulted? It could be you, a friend, a family member. Text to 22333, SA yes if you do, SA no if you don't know someone who has been sexually assaulted.
Were you surprised when Kelly asked how many of you knew somebody who was a survivor and the majority of the room raised their hand?
No, because I know the statistics. If I didn't know the statistics, then I would be surprised.
75%. How many of you are surprised that 75% of the people in this room know someone who has been sexually assaulted? No? We spoke on a campus for all incoming students, and it was an August program, and we didn't meet anyone that we kept in touch with on that particular campus. We just kind of did our thing, went along our way, and actually a good friend of ours is an instructor on that campus and an administrator. She said, I asked my students to each write about something that significantly impacted them, something that stuck out in their mind as an experience that they had at the university their first semester. And this student wrote about this program called Let's Talk About It that these two ladies came and did on their campus, and how she, for the first time, said, okay, I'm a survivor of sexual assault. This happened to me. And by us telling our story, it triggered some things in her emotionally, and she went and got help.
I think I still get emotional just remembering. I should have brought tissues today, but I don't know, it just reminds me of how far I've come, but how much you guys played a role in how far I've come. So
we feel the same way about you. I mean, honestly, like, I'm not just saying that. I mean, when Becca says we do what we do, like, when I was watching you, I'm like sitting there telling my story thinking I'm speaking for her. And that's the way that I feel. And and Becca's gonna get me crying. It was like you were the only one there, Liz. No, it means a lot to know that.
I tried not to look at you because I'm like, I'm crying. I don't want to make her cry.
No, I couldn't tell. You were kind of far away. But like when I'm talking, I'm looking and thinking I'm speaking for her and continue to do this so that this doesn't happen to her friends. That's the awesome part and the shitty part all at once in this work, when we're in the program and I can see people's faces, and it's almost, not that I know, like you, but you just kind of have a sense, and I can look at the way people are reacting, and I can tell from what I think which ones are survivors and who I'm talking to. And I want to just leap off the stage and go to them and say, you're not alone. It's not your fault. I support you.
How would you react if someone you care about came to you and confided in you and told you they were sexually assaulted? How would you react? Upset? Angry? Kill someone? Yes, that's tell someone. Okay, tell. All right, we've gotten the kill. That's a very common response. That's okay. Okay. Becca and I had the chance to meet with some lovely students this afternoon to talk about our nonprofit organization, One Student. And one of the reasons that this work is so incredibly important to Becca and I is because we had an experience in college that forever changed our lives. When I was a senior in college, I was raped by someone that I knew. And I was so afraid to tell people because I was afraid how they would react. I was afraid that they would think I was a victim. I was afraid they wouldn't believe me. And I was really nervous, especially to tell the men in my life, because it just was kind of scary for me because I was raped by a man. And so about a year after I was assaulted, I got to that confident, survivor, good, empowered place where I felt like I could start telling some people. I went to my guy best friend, because I have a guy best friend and a girl best friend. Maybe you do too. It works for me. And I said, I have something really important to tell you, and it's kind of serious. And he was like, okay. He was all ready. So we're sitting down in his living room, and I got the first sentence out of my mouth. I said, last year, I was sexually assaulted, and I went to go say more, and before I could get anything out, he rose up off the couch, all 6'4" of him, towering over me, and he said, who is he? Where is he? Is he dead, or is he in jail yet? Because if he's not, he's going to be both. And I'm like, okay, he's going to be dead and in jail. This is kind of a tricky situation. And the veins are popping out of his neck. Spit is flying. I hope the spit didn't hit you in the face. Okay, the spit is flying out of his mouth, hitting me in the face. And he looked mad. I started defending myself. I started defending my attacker. I started questioning whether or not I was really raped, whether or not I should tell people. And then I stood there and I said, no, Kelly, you can do this. This isn't right. He doesn't know how to react. You're going to talk through this. So I remember this great little pamphlet that Becca and I came up with. And I pulled it out of my handbag and I showed it to him. And I said, Oren, this is what you're supposed to say. You're supposed to say, I believe you. I support you. It's not your fault. What happened to me will always be a shock. It will never be okay. But I will be. And I'll never forget. When we do the program, I sometimes have to pretend that I'm talking about someone else because it feels so real, because it was. And the only reason that I'm able to tell my story over and over again is because I know it's not just my story. I know that someone in the audience has had that happen to them. I know that someone in the audience is going to have to be Becca. And it hurts. I'd be lying to every single person that I talked to that, the question that actually got
a Facebook message just 2 days ago from a student that we've been working with that we met in the fall. And she said, you know, I want to know what it's like. I want to know, you know, if what I'm feeling is normal. I want to know when the nightmares stop. And I've waited several days to respond to her because I have to tell her they may never stop. You know, the different things that I've dealt with emotionally, just being a woman, and, you know, this pregnancy and this miscarriage is looming over me. Having conversations with my husband now about growing our own family has caused triggers that I never imagined would come into my life. And they do. It never goes away. It never goes away. But you can become stronger, you can become better, and you can become more comfortable with being vulnerable. And that's the hardest part for me, because I hate being vulnerable. So sharing our story with complete strangers is sometimes easier for me because they get to see the parts of me that I choose to share with them. I choose to share my story, and they don't go home with me. At least I'm not going to tell you about that part now. I mean, they don't see who I really am. So sharing those bits and pieces of part of my life is a way for me to still control the vulnerability. But even being vulnerable with Becca, who we've been best friends for 22 flippin' years, 22 years, even being vulnerable with her is sometimes hard. And explaining to people how something that happened to me 14 years ago still affects my psyche in a way that I hate that I can't control is a really difficult thing.
And action. So we're at Voodoo Donuts and that's hard to say. Voodoo Donuts.
Voodoo Donuts, Voodoo Donuts, Voodoo Donuts, yeah. Voodoo Donuts, Voodoo Donuts, Voodoo Donuts, yeah. All right.
Do you know that voodoo that you do? It's mad. Ooh, this is a drug-free zone, safe zone.
No pets, no drugs.
So like in there, no drugs, but out here, you get high as a kite. It's like lip sync. Like I'm behind the camera and you're in front of the camera. What's another song that we know?
What do you mean that you know the chorus?
Yeah. The minute you walked in the joint, I could tell you were a man of distinction, a real big spender, good looking, so refined. Wouldn't you like to know what's going on in my mind? So let me get right to the point.